Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about the housing association which says that since I didn't go to work, I am being evicted. The first time I heard I was being evicted for not going to work, I was in the barn teaching a heifer to accept a halter. The halter was pink because my niece had insisted, and the calf, who answered only to spaghetti, was chewing in that thoughtful way animals do when they've decided humans are strange, but possibly harmless. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel, then the quick little cough of someone who wants to sound official. I stepped out into the light with a bucket of feed and a bail hook, and a woman in a stiff blazer held up a clipboard like a shield. "Are you the occupant?" she said. "Owner," I said. "Can I help you?" "By order of the Homeowners Association, you are hereby notified that your failure to maintain employment and cooperative attitudes constitutes grounds for immediate removal. Also, your property is required for a community event next Saturday. You'll be expected to vacate by Friday afternoon." I laughed. Then I stopped laughing because she didn't. The bucket of feed hung from my hand, and spaghetti made a curious noise behind me, like even she sensed the conversation had jumped the rails. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping my hand on my jeans. "You've got the wrong place. This is a private house on a private lot. I'm not in any homeowners association. Everyone in the community is part of the association," she said, smiling the way people smile when they expect you to fold, by virtue of proximity and shared values. I glanced at the long fence line that marked the end of my property and the beginning of a new development I never approved of. A tempo of construction had been beating on the edge of my old pasture for a year. Houses had popped up like mushrooms after rain. The developer had promised country living with community amenities, which meant a clubhouse the size of a dental office, a dog park that looked suspiciously like an empty field, and a lot of iron-on rules about mailbox colors and the height of holiday decorations. "Myra," the woman said, tapping her clipboard. "President. 1. I'm not in your association," I said. 2. You can't use my farm for your party. 3. I go to work every morning at 4. You're standing on it." Myra blinked. She glanced down at the clipboard as if the script might have an answer. "The board voted," she said. "Great," I said. "The board can vote on who brings potato salad. They can't vote me out of my home." "We'll be sending a final notice," she replied, stepping back as if she'd delivered a summons. "Enjoy your day, sir." She clipped the words like snipping a flower you didn't want anyway. Then she turned, heels crunching on my gravel, climbed into a compact SUV and drove toward the new subdivision where the roofs all matched. I watched the road dust settle, then walked back into the barn feeling a little dizzy, like I'd missed a memo written in invisible ink. Spaghetti pressed her forehead to my elbow, and I stroked the warm spot between her horns. "We're not the crazy ones," I told her. "I promise." I didn't do anything that afternoon beyond stapling a fresh no trespassing private property sign to the fence. I figured someone had gotten confused. Maybe they'd realized their event planner had promised a pastoral lawn and discovered the dog park had a drainage trench. I went back to chores. Evening came on with the smell of damp hay and the slow chorus of frogs from the pond behind the house. The next morning, there was a bright yellow envelope stuck to my gate. "Final notice of eviction," it screamed in big block letters, followed by a bunch of paragraphs that used words like covenants, community standards, and lazy. The letter announced that my failure to maintain gainful employment created optics inconsistent with the community brand. It required me to vacate by Friday at 5 p.m. so the community could facilitate a private members-only celebration recognizing premier volunteers on Saturday, using the adjacent field for staging. It even had a schedule: lights, tents, live music, catering, fireworks. I read it twice and then once more for the sheer novelty of the thing. Then I took a picture of it, front and back. I made coffee. I called my friend Travis, who worked in real estate law and always answered on the second ring. "Tell me this is a prank," I said. He listened while I read the letter. I could hear him typing. "Okay," he said finally. "First things first, you're not in an HOA. When you bought, the title search would have noted any recorded covenants, conditions, and restrictions. CC&Rs, the documents that form an HOA's backbone. I remember you complained about the county clerk's parking meter, so I know you did a proper closing. Also, your property predates that development by decades, so there's no way their CC&Rs bind you unless you willingly annexed in. You didn't." "I didn't," I said. "And I'm not planning on it now that they've crowned me King Lazy." "Good," he said. "So legally they're blowing smoke, but they're also planning to trespass. That part isn't smoke. And fireworks?" He whistled. "County jurisdiction. noise ordinances, fire restrictions, permits. If they don't have them, and they probably don't, they're in real trouble. He told me to keep every letter, take photos of everything, and stay polite on my end. He texted me a list of code sections: criminal trespass, harassment, unlawful debt collection practices if they tried to levy fines that didn't belong. He told me that if they appeared on my property again, I should call the sheriff's non-emergency line and request a deputy for a civil standby. And he told me not to, under any circumstances, go onto their property to tear down their signs or yell at their people. Malicious compliance is your best friend here, he said. Also, methodical documentation. Documentation I can do, I said. I've kept receipts for fence nails since I was 20. After I hung up, I pulled out my lockbox. I had the deed, the title insurance, and the survey map with the old oak trees drawn in shaky ink. I took pictures of each document, then walked the fence line with my phone, recording a smooth video that showed the property markers. Rebar capped with orange plastic, right where the survey said they'd be. I made another pass filming the no trespassing signs. Then I called the county clerk to ask whether any new CC&Rs had been recorded that referenced my parcel. The clerk, a patient woman who recognized my voice because I bring in eggs sometimes, confirmed nothing encumbered my property beyond the utility easements I already knew about. "You're clean," she said. "If anyone says otherwise, have them pull the book and page numbers." I thanked her and baked a tray of cornbread because that's what I do when I need to think. While it baked, I drafted a short letter. "To whom it may concern, I am not a member of your association. Your purported eviction notice has no legal effect. Your planned event on my property would constitute criminal trespass. Any further attempts to enter my land will be met with law enforcement and civil action. Govern yourselves accordingly." I printed it and sent it by certified mail to the address on their letterhead, and also emailed it to a generic board address they'd listed. 2 hours later, a man with a chest like a barrel and a haircut like a shoe brush showed up with a roll of survey tape and a tape measure. He climbed over my fence as if it were a suggestion. I watched him from the porch, heart beating too fast for a Tuesday morning. He was out there putting neon tape around my water spigot and pacing off distances toward my barn like he was measuring for a tent. I brought my phone. "Morning," I said. "Can I help you?" He looked up like I was the intrusion. "Association Logistics," he said. "We'll need generators here and access to that barn outlet. Where do your breakers live?" "This is private property," I said, bright and polite. "You're trespassing. Please leave." He snorted. "You just don't like rules, do you?" I called the sheriff's office while he was still prattling. The dispatcher promised to send someone. I filmed the man with my phone while reading my letter out loud. He laughed and told me I was cute. Spaghetti mooed from the barn. Deputy Harlan arrived with the easy walk of someone who has to break up arguments about fences 3 times a week. I'd met him once at a charity barbecue. He usually wore a hat, but today he wore the expression of a man expecting to be bored. "Morning," he said to me. "Morning," he said to the man with the neon tape. "What's going on here?" I explained. I handed him the letter. I showed him my deed on my phone, and I showed him the property line markers in the distance. The deputy nodded like he was checking boxes on a mental list. He looked at the neon tape man. "You have permission to be here?" he asked, mild as iced tea. The man smiled a thin smile. "We're the association," he said, as if that explained any geometry. "We've got a community event planned. The farm is part of the community." "The farm is a separate property," the deputy said. "And unless you have permission from the owner, you need to leave. Right now." "What if I refuse?" the man said, squaring his shoulders like he expected a duel. "Then I'll write you a criminal trespass warning," the deputy said. "If you come back, you'll be arrested. It's much less exciting than it sounds." Neon tape finally glanced at me, then at the deputy, then at the barn. He stuffed the tape into his pocket and climbed my fence again with a huff. "This isn't over," he said, because of course it wasn't. "Have a good day," I said. "Please don't come back." After the deputy left, I added 2 more no trespassing signs, angled so they were obvious from the roads leading in. Then I installed a motion-activated camera on the corner of the barn and another by the driveway. I texted my neighbor, Elsie, a retired teacher who lived in a renovated school bus behind a line of cedars. She keeps an eye on my place when I'm away and brings over hand pies when she's experimenting with berries. "Association storming the gates," she wrote back. "Apparently I'm lazy and evicted," I replied. "Also, my field is a party venue now. I'll bring my lawn chair," she wrote, "and a notebook." By Thursday, there were flyers tacked to utility poles in the subdivision. "Volunteer Appreciation Gala, Saturday night, exclusive fireworks. They'd circled my fence line in pencil on a map with an arrow pointing to the pasture like it was a picnic shelter. The more I thought about it, the more my annoyance settled into something heavier. I've had my little farm a long time. I work out there in the cold and heat and rain, and I pay my taxes like a boring citizen. I fix my fences, mend my clothes, and keep the tractors running with the help of an old repair manual and a lot of coffee. The idea that someone in an ironed blazer could simply decide they ran me felt like a barbed wire snag. It wasn't just rude, it was dangerous. People who believed rules bent to their ambition always did the most damage. Friday morning, I woke to the sound of staples. Someone was putting up signs on my fence. I got outside fast. This time it was Myra herself, flanked by 2 people carrying folding tables. The sign said, "Members only, event check-in Saturday," with arrows pointing toward my driveway. "Take those down," I said, voice low, because my mother always told me low voices travel further when you mean business. Right now, Myra turned like she'd been expecting applause. "We gave you notice," she said. "You were expected to vacate by 5 today. I hope you packed up. We'll be bringing in equipment this afternoon." "You gave me paper you printed at home," I said. "It's meaningless." "It's a legal notice," she said, a little too quickly. "No," I said, "it's not. And even if I were a member, which I'm not, you still couldn't enter my property without permission. That's not how it works." "Look," she said, switching to soothing. "I understand change is hard, but we're building something beautiful, and you can be part of it if you show a cooperative spirit. Right now, you're refusing to contribute. We have bylaws about that." "I have a deed," I said. She hit me with a smile that reminded me of someone tasting lemonade and pretending it wasn't sharp. "You can call the authorities if you want," she said. "It won't change the vote." I'd already called. Deputy Harlan arrived with a second deputy, and this time he wrote the trespass warnings. He explained each line. He told them to sign, acknowledging they'd been warned. Myra signed with a tight hand. The 2 helpers signed too, glancing at Myra as if she'd explain why they were being scolded on a gravel driveway. Then the deputies told them to leave and not come back. After they went, I called the county fire marshal. I asked if anyone had filed for a fireworks permit near my address. They had not. I asked about noise permits for outdoor amplified music. None filed. The marshal's voice had a familiar shrug in it. "We'll have units out Saturday night," he said politely, which is public service code for, "We're going to be busy." That afternoon, I visited the planning office in town. I brought a copy of the eviction notice and the flyers. I didn't demand anything. I just asked whether I could file a complaint for unpermitted events and harassment. A planner with a sunflower pin promised they'd add it to their log and coordinate with law enforcement. She also gave me the direct number for the on-call code enforcement officer for Saturday night. "In case they try something," she said. Elsie came over with peach hand pies and sat on the porch while the sun slanted. "People who think community is a magic word," she said. "Always forget it's supposed to mean common care, not carte blanche." Her dog, Pilgrim, stretched on the steps. We watched the lights blink on across the fields in the new development, all the windows glowing at the same time, like the houses had agreed not to be individual. I felt a tug between frustration and a sort of wary curiosity. How far would they push this? If a group could decide it ran everything it could see, where did that stop? A neighbor's pasture today, the air above it tomorrow. Saturday morning arrived with the smell of cut grass. I loaded a roll of cattle panel into the truck and parked it just inside the gate so I could close everything quickly if I needed to. I set the motion cameras to ping my phone. I placed a printed copy of my letter in a plastic sleeve on the gate. I called Travis, and he took a break from youth soccer to give me a pep talk and a strategy briefing. Keep the gate closed. Call when they step onto your land, and don't escalate. If fireworks appear, call fire. If speakers appear, call code enforcement. If people go around the gate, film and call the sheriff. "I hate this," I said. "I hate being the person who calls people." "You're not calling people," he said. "You're calling the law to do the thing it's for, keeping you safe and protected. Don't give away your peace to avoid someone else's inconvenience." By late afternoon, cars were trickling into the subdivision. I stood at the barn, out of sight, and watched through the slats. My phone buzzed with camera alerts. A group in matching shirts walking toward my fence with clipboards. One of them, Neon Tape Man, carried a box of wristbands, as if that made the pasture a concert hall. They clustered near the gate reading my letter. I saw their shoulders go up and down with talk. Then I saw a man I hadn't met before, tall with a sunburned neck, swing his legs over my fence. I walked toward him with my phone already dialing. "Sir," I called, calm as a lake, "do not enter my property." "I'm just checking the path," he said, voice already irritated like he had somewhere more important to be than on my gravel. "You're trespassing," I said. "Please step back." He took another step forward, the way people do when they want to see how serious you are. Deputy Harlan's cruiser turned onto the shoulder by my driveway so fast I knew he'd been nearby on purpose. The tall man froze. We went through the script again: warning, acknowledgement, leave. This time the deputy handed out a few more warnings to people who hadn't gotten them yet. It rained a little then, a polite shower that made the dust calm down and the grass perk up. People milled in the subdivision street looking confused. I kept doing my chores. I put hay out. I checked the water lines. I listened to spaghetti chew. And then my phone buzzed again with a motion alert from the back corner, the part of the fence that borders a little utility access lane most folks don't know about. Two shadows moved along the trees, then a third. They had a ladder. I watched, heart on a drum, as they propped the ladder against my fence and climbed over like cartoon burglars. They were careful, but not careful enough to hide from a camera set high in the oak tree. I called the sheriff again. I called the fire marshal because I saw one of them carrying a cardboard box that clinked like rockets. I texted the code enforcement number from the planner with "Trespass now at back corner" and my address. By the time I got back there jogging, breath loud in my ears, Deputy Harlan and a second patrol car were already crawling along the access lane. The three shadows froze and then tried to run, but running through brush is a young person's game and only one of them had the legs. The other two were caught neatly. The boxes were indeed fireworks, expensive ones with names that sounded like battles. "Unpermitted fireworks," the deputy said, writing, "on private property after a criminal trespass warning. This is not your lucky hour." The one who had run got away briefly but left a phone behind. It buzzed on the ground with a lit screen, and I, being a good citizen, did not touch it. The deputy bagged it like evidence in a TV show. He took statements. I showed him the camera footage. He said the words I'd been waiting to hear all day, the ones that sound bureaucratic but feel like a hug when someone's stomping your boundaries. "We'll be forwarding charges." Back near the gate, a shouting match had begun. People wanted their event, and they wanted it now. The association had promised them fireworks and finger foods, and they were not going to let a small thing like property law get in the way of vibes. Myra stood on the tailgate of a pickup like a rally MC and tried to explain that some things had changed. Elsie arrived, all 5'3" of her, with a lawn chair and a composition notebook. She sat up on my side of the fence and started writing with deliberate loops. "You documenting?" I asked. "I'm writing a letter to the editor," she said. "Whether I send it depends on how this goes." As the sky dimmed, a man in an embroidered polo I recognized from neighborhood meetings about drainage approached the gate with a battery-powered speaker. "We're setting up the band here," he declared, as if the sentence had the force of law. I recited my poem about private property again. The speaker glared at me like I'd told him he couldn't have dessert. By 8, the cluster of event hopefuls had thinned. Some neighbors, seeing deputies and hearing the words "trespass warning," decided to go home. Others demanded refunds for tickets they'd bought. This was the first I'd heard of tickets. I took a screenshot of a social media post where people were commenting about the cost. Apparently, volunteer appreciation required a charge to cover the experience. The more I read, the stranger it got. Some folks were mad because they'd paid good money and wanted fireworks. Others were mad at the farmer for just existing where the association needed ambiguity. The comments grew more pointed, and I saw my property described as public-facing, like a storefront window. At 9, the fire marshal's truck rolled through the subdivision, lights blinking. At 9:30, code enforcement drove by, then parked just beyond my driveway. Deputy Harlan stopped in for a second round of paperwork and a wink. Myra paced in the street having a quiet argument with Neon Tape Man, who kept looking at the deputy like a kid who has done the math and realized he's not getting his way. Then someone did a thing people do when they mistake decisiveness for intelligence. They lit one of the fireworks anyway. It screeched into the air and exploded low, scattering sparks like a giant sprinkle jar. It was not on my property, but it was close, and it was against the permit rules they didn't have. The fire marshal and the deputy turned as one, and in 10 seconds there were 3 uniforms walking briskly toward the person with the lighter. The fireworks went back into a trunk, the trunk got inspected, and the owner of the trunk got a citation that made him look like he wished he'd stayed home. By 10, the gala was reduced to a few lawn chairs clumped together like they'd lost their courage. Someone's playlist sputtered out of a phone speaker. Myra had vanished. Neon Tape Man was nowhere. Elsie had 2 pages of notes and an expression like a teacher who has decided which students need extra help next semester. What I did not know, as I let the quiet settle over my pasture like a blanket, was that the next 2 weeks would turn from absurdity to consequences. I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong. The event had been step 1. The real show started when Myra decided if she couldn't use my property by charm or threat, she'd try paperwork with sharper teeth. She made a complaint to a county board claiming my barn violated a setback. Never mind the survey, never mind the barn's age. She lodged a complaint about unregistered livestock that had no basis in any law. She sent a letter to a business that buys my eggs, hinting that I was unreliable and under investigation. That last one made something cold settle in my stomach because it smelled like intentional harm. I'm not the person who goes looking for a fight, but I am the person who finishes one once it starts, and I am very good at reading fine print. I also have a streak, call it stubborn, call it loyal to myself, that insists people who act like rules only apply to others need a corrective lens. So I did what anyone who grew up fixing fences with baling wire does. I made a plan that used the materials at hand. I called Travis and asked for an hour on Monday morning. I took out a notebook and wrote down what I wanted: to protect my home, to stop the harassment, to discourage anyone from trying this again. I did not want revenge for its own sake. I wanted repair. Step 1 was going to be as old as property lines: official notice, documented, served. Step 2 would involve a complaint, not to a manager but to the state where certain licenses live and breathe. Step 3 would be to invite light, public, bright, almost boring in how it makes nonsense wilt. And step 4, if it came to it, would be to make a record with a judge, the way you record boundaries on paper so people can't pretend to forget. I closed the gate. I locked it. I put Spaghetti to bed, which is to say I made sure she had enough hay and water and a gentle pat, and I went inside to type up a timeline with timestamps from my cameras and phone logs. Myra had wanted to play association president on someone else's land. She had wanted to wrap her will in the trappings of community. I was going to wrap my will in the trappings of law. The difference is that mine would hold. On Monday morning, I walked into Travis's office with a folder thick enough to be a novella. He read, hummed, underlined. He nodded at my certified letters and grinned at the camera stills. Then he leaned back and said, "We have options. What's the fastest one that doesn't burn bridges with the innocent people over there who just wanted finger foods and fireworks?" I asked. He pointed with his pen. "Cease and desist for harassment and tortious interference," he said. "We send it to Myra and to the association's registered agent. We include specifics: the fake eviction, the trespass, the false claims to your buyer, the unpermitted event. We set a deadline for written retraction to your egg buyer and proof they've informed their membership that you're not part of their HOA." I nodded. "And if they ignore us? Then we file for a restraining order for harassment and for a declaratory judgment that you're not bound by their CC and Rs. While that's pending, we report any licensed activity to the state. If Myra holds a real estate license, which I think she does because I recognize her from a brochure, I'll look it up. Trying to evict someone from a property outside your HOA, using association letterhead to threaten and harass, could implicate professional ethics. If she's also involved in property management, this is uglier." He tapped my notes. "And we file public information requests for their board meetings, budgets, and permits. If they sold tickets and promised fireworks without permits, they've got exposure." I exhaled, tension leaving my shoulders like I'd stepped out of a heavy coat. "Let's do it," I said. He told me to film service of the cease and desist, not to be spicy, but to prove notice. He told me to keep doing what I was doing, calm, professional, boring as a tax form. It's amazing how powerful boring can be when someone expects you to be explosive. We drafted the letter. It was precise, not flowery. It quoted statutes. It listed dates and times. It required a retraction and apology to the business that buys my eggs, naming the damage and inviting cure. It warned of litigation and fees if ignored. It demanded confirmation that all members had been told not to enter my property and that all promotional materials using my land were removed. When I left, I drove straight to the address listed as the association's registered agent. It turned out to be a small office in a strip of professional suites with doors that slammed politely. The receptionist wore a cardigan and a look that said she'd seen everything and kept it neatly filed. I handed over the letter for the registered agent and asked for a stamped receipt. Then I walked next door to a little storefront that housed Myra's property business. Because yes, Travis had been right. The polished headshots in the window featured her layered hair and reassuring smile. I set my phone in my pocket on video, walked in and asked for Myra. She came out from the back with a smile that held for a second, then shifted when she recognized me. "Delivering a letter," I said, putting it on the counter. "Please consider yourself served." "This is highly unorthodox," she said. "So were fireworks on private property," I said. "Have a good day." Back in my truck, I breathed and then I laughed because sometimes the thing that sets the tone for your day is the look on someone's face when they realize you are not, in fact, a character they get to write. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know until later, was that my letter had the effect of tipping a bucket that had been full for longer than I realized. Members of the association had been grumbling. Neon Tape Man, the logistics guy, had wanted the gala to happen on the clubhouse's park, but Myra had insisted on authentic rural vibes because she thought it would sell more tickets. She had ruffled volunteers and overruled a safety committee that had helpfully said, "No fireworks, please." When my letter landed, the bucket tipped. Within 24 hours, I began receiving emails, unsolicited, from people in the subdivision. They apologized for the behavior of their leadership. They assured me they had no interest in my land beyond admiring the cows. They attached screenshots of message threads where Myra had told them I was non-cooperative, had accused me of hoarding land, and had insisted that their covenants covered the neighborhood's aesthetic perimeter, which is not a thing. They gave me the names of the 3 men who'd tried to climb the fence with fireworks, one of whom was the person who'd lit the rogue rocket later. They explained that a reimbursement fund was being set up because the event had been sold as a fundraiser for a future playground, and now members were angry. I read those emails twice, then I added them to my folder. I didn't write back anything beyond, "Thank you for your note. I appreciate your kindness. Please don't send anything privately that you wouldn't want shared publicly in a lawful proceeding." Because I meant to stay boring and I meant to stay clear, but the picture was assembling. A small circle had decided their dream of control should swallow the edges of everything around them, and now the edges were pushing back. A week after the cease and desist, the State Real Estate Board acknowledged my complaint. The county opened an investigation into illegal fireworks and trespass, and the fire marshal sent a short note. Charges filed. Not a confession, but the first line in a ledger of consequences. I hoped that would be enough. It wasn't. 3 certified letters hit county boards, attacking my barn and livestock, each with Myra's return address. That was escalation. Next came a hearing to decide whether a private farm had somehow become a neighborhood amenity. The notice arrived on a Tuesday disguised as a dentist bill, County Board of Zoning Adjustment, time, date, and my parcel number. The complaints claimed my barn violated a vista corridor setback, and my livestock weren't registered with the community. A zoning board is both law and theater. I built a simple story. I gathered a stamped survey, the county map proving the barn's age, historic aerials from the gravel road years, and the permit for the roof my grandfather replaced. The planner said to read page 3. The barn predates current zoning and is a legal, non-conforming structure. The subdivision's covenants do not affect this separate parcel. Staff recommended denial. On hearing day, I wore clean jeans and a button shirt. Elsie brought her notebook. Poppy, Travis's associate, brought triplicate copies. Myra arrived with a name tag entourage. The chair asked if I wished to be heard. I kept it short. My name, my deed, my barn older than anyone in the room, my permits and survey stamps, my respect for their right to choose mailbox colors matched by my right to choose a calf's halter. Board members asked about the utility easement. I confirmed access. Poppy handed over the utilities letter. Then Myra spoke about neighborhood character, line of sight, and shared values. She called my barn an aesthetic blight and implied the county should preserve a brochure photo. A board member asked, "Are you aware your covenants don't apply outside your recorded plat?" She answered, "Our vision is broader." He replied, "Vision doesn't encumber land, recorded documents do." Another asked if they had permits for the event. She didn't say yes. The board voted unanimously. Complaints denied. Respect for process includes respect for its limits, the chair said. 2 days later, a forwarded email announced a special meeting, leadership issues, confidence vote, and an apology for misunderstanding our boundaries. By week's end, Myra was removed as president. The vice president resigned. The treasurer took the gavel and ordered an audit after ticket money wandered into fog. 3 seats went vacant. A committee promised a clear boundary policy. Consequences had taken the bus, not the parade. The county followed through. The 3 fence climbers were charged with criminal trespass. The rocket lighter paid a fine and took a safety class. The fireworks vendor got a warning. Then the state wrote back. I submitted the fake eviction, the gate video, the egg buyer letter, and the board docket. The order landed: a 60-day license suspension for Myra, probation with ethics and HOA law courses, a civil penalty, and a warning about further violations. Misrepresentation of authority fit like a puzzle piece. You don't need a badge to bully, just confidence and a clipboard. 3 weeks after the hearing, Neon Tape Man Darren came to apologize. I believed association meant authority, he said. I didn't check. He helped me move a cattle panel, admitted the barn felt like a postcard, and handed me a small check from leftover event funds. I bought better signs and promised occasional tours, with permission. The association posted its own. Respect boundaries. Private properties around our neighborhood are not amenities. Enjoy views from public roads only. Boring. Perfect. Midsummer, Myra went quiet. Her office posted temporarily closed. One fence climber wrote an apology after court. I knew better. I took a shortcut. I saved it as proof people can turn. Travis filed for declaratory judgment. The court entered a stipulated order that I am not, now or later, subject to their covenants, with sanctions for future attempts. I framed it near the keys. Justice here wasn't fireworks. It was paperwork, charges, suspensions, service hours, new signs, a boundary walk, and a kid day on my terms. The bright yellow eviction sits in my binder beside the order. Sometimes I reread optics inconsistent with the community brand. Then look at dew, boots, and goats like marbles rolling downhill. The brand here is 3 generations of hands. If a yellow envelope ever blooms on your gate, breathe. Call the offices that keep lines straight. Save everything. Stay calm. Invite consequences. Then build a small yes, a tour, a boundary walk, a cooler by the ditch. When the mosquitoes announce their shift change, close the gate, lock it, and write what I wrote. Resolution reached. We remain. The point wasn't to humiliate anyone. It was to make the wrong stop and keep it from coming back. Boundaries, once explained and enforced, gave everyone calmer choices and a cleaner map to live by. That, more than noise or fireworks, felt like real community again. Friends, thank you. See you soon.